Hello. Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Nichols, and this is my podcast, Royal Treats. Thank you for being here. I am a little bit delayed on getting your last podcast out on the 12 days of Christmas. I apologise, but some technical issues and some personal things. So it just wasn't possible for me to record. And I do apologise because I did promise you 12 days of podcasting. And so we are here on the 12th day, slightly delayed. But nonetheless, I'm a believer that it's better late than never in so many ways. And I think it's a case of showing up, even if it's a bit complicated and a little bit messy and it's not perfect. But are any of us perfect? No. And I think what I've always tried to deliver with you throughout this series is honesty and integrity and authenticity. I've took ownership of who I am on this journey, and you've been here with me, maybe some of you from the beginning of the podcast series, and some of you are just jumping on and finding out who I am. I'm a big believer that we're all going to fail at some point in our life, and I'm a big believer that lessons are going to be learned and that there is no such thing as perfect or perfection in so many ways. Can we just ban the word perfect? Can we just ban it from all language? Because I think we've put ourselves in boxes and we've given ourselves labels. And we've separated ourselves from each other with these labels, and we just don't. We're not worthy of these. We're not even worthy of these labels. We're not deserving of labels. Us humans, I want you to think about and describe who you are as a human being without a label, and see if you can actually do it without a job title. Without saying where you're from. Without describing your ethnicity or country of origin. Who are you? And this is something that, I'm always getting you to think about, right? I'm getting you to think about who you are, like as a human being, like real deep thinking. Who are you? So this podcast I wanted to bring you was based on boundaries and what it meant to identify your own unique style of how you deal and set boundaries. And obviously what's been established within your own relationships in terms of boundaries, and maybe there isn't any boundaries in your relationships, and this is what's causing frustration and friction and animosity within your relationships, because no one's really being respectful of each other. And I think this can happen in a family dynamic more so than it can happen in a partnership, but 100% can happen in a partnership as well. It's not something we're taught, not really, or we should be taught from young about boundaries. Tristan, my son, who's 8, he's very aware of what's acceptable to me and what's not acceptable for me, what's okay and what's not okay. And I make that very clear verbally, that's not okay, that's upsetting for mummy. I don't really want you talking to me like that, or I don't really want you, expressing yourself in such a manner around me, or whatever it is. If it upsets me and it affects me, I'm going to be vocal about it, right? So this is what we're going to be touching on today on the show. I think it's very powerful when we understand our own styles and unique styles of boundaries, and so how to become really clear about boundary setting. Yeah. So we're all communicating very different. This is where we can really be powerful with our communication when we look at boundaries. Excuse me. Thirsty, parched. I myself have been a particular boundary style over the years. You might know me as Queen, but I've definitely been a bit of an ice queen and a bit more of a frozen, shut off if I feel that the boundaries have been overstepped. And I know I think a lot of people are like that, right? Someone crosses the line Once, twice, do you have a conversation about it, or do you just be like, I'm done, and walk away? I've walked away from things that I probably think I could have had a conversation about. I could have been more open to. I could have been more disengaged, but more appropriately disengaged. And so I think it's understanding and communicating in a way that both parties really are understanding and be willing to receive and let the other person's voice be heard, or let each other's voice be heard, because this is really what we're dealing with in the throat chakra. Now, depending on how you grew up, and depending on your own environment as a child, this will affect you as a being. Definitely affected me within my own environment, because there wasn't any clear rules within the home. There wasn't any clear boundaries of what was okay and what wasn't okay. There wasn't conversations. There wasn't any dialogue. There wasn't any communication. Something that I've spoke about before is that my mum had a mental health issue, so nobody thought of her own. Anyone can fall into that space. But I understand from my perspective, from a spiritual perspective, as an energy master perspective, as a coach's perspective, I understand that depression comes and goes, or it doesn't go because we're consumed by the depression, and we're consumed by the anxiety, and we're consumed by the worry. And so like attracts like in terms of law of attraction, and which is I really deal with a lot with. So the more you're negative in your thinking, the more depressed you're feeling, the more thoughts that are depressed and dark, the more you're going to attract that, because that's what the universe, God, thinks you want in your life. Okay, that's what you've settled for in many ways. So remember, we always have a choice to either play victim or be creator. A creator's mentality is, I've accepted there's been darkness in my life. I've accepted that there has been failures, and I've accepted that I have failed, and there have been lessons that have been learned in that space. And I accept that I am a creator, and I can move past this and build and create a life that I want to live, or I can be the human being that I want to be. It's powerful when you take ownership and responsibility of your health, mentally, physically, everything. There are no excuses. I often see people who don't have money, who are stressed out, but yet they don't actively do anything to get out of that situation, which was my mum's situation for a very long time. Of course, she went to work, and she worked as a cleaner, which obviously was just only giving her money. But she did try to go to college to learn different things, and I admire her for her efforts. But often enough, she would give up. If it got a bit too difficult, my mum wasn't the person who would ask for help. And that was even within her own parenting. That was even within how she parented me. She wouldn't ask for advice or help from other people. If people did give her any advice, it was a personal attack on her. And I'm wondering how many other people feel like that. If you reach out for someone, and it's kind of like, I can help you, I can support you, but they instantly feel like you're making them wrong. I remember going on a parenting course 3 years ago, which sparked a change in me that would also kind of was able for me to manifest the money I needed to manifest that year, and I won the lottery. If I had not been willing to try to better myself, because I was also not in a dark place, but I wasn't loving myself the way I am now. I wasn't connected to myself on that level. I wasn't aligned in many ways in terms of chakras and stuff, but I saw it as an opportunity. I could have been defensive, and I could have said, what do people think? I'm a bad parent. I'm not going to do the parenting course. Nothing wrong with my parenting skills. And that's kind of how my mum's attitude was. And it's even maybe with people who are depressed or anxious, like, they don't really want to admit there's a problem there. It's judgment and shame and vulnerability, and they feel that you're making them wrong, maybe, possibly. And so we have to always switch it, and we always have to think like, No, these are people who actually genuinely care for me. Like, if I go out, me personally now in this space, if I go out of my way to give you some advice or give you my time, it's because I care for you and I want you to do well as a human being, and I can see a potential in you. But some people just, they don't do that, and we communicate very differently. And I said, we're all on different frequencies out here. And so you gotta be willing to have compassion in that space. So I've definitely learned over the years to have more compassion and less blame, and step into a space of acceptance. And when we step into a space of acceptance, we do step into a space of love. Accept people for who they are. You don't have to obviously be around them if they're not the sort of people that you want to be associating with, and that's totally fine, by the way. You can love people from a distance. You don't have to take on their problems. You don't have to please them. You don't have to bend over backwards if it takes from you, because we understand that there's finding balance, right? And there's also getting people to take responsibility for their own lives and their own thoughts and their own actions. It's let's go into the boundaries, because I think it will all kind of unravel, and as we go through, and we can talk about things from that perspective as well. So I think it's important that we give our children space and privacy. I think we listen to their voices. I think their voices matter. I think they have their own ways of thinking and seeing the world, and we have to not impose unnecessarily our beliefs onto them, but let them to go through life discovering and failing even before they actually find their own way or get onto their own path, as it were, as I believe. And I think it's important also that we encourage individual feelings, okay, and that it's okay to be different from someone else. It's okay to feel different from someone else in regards to maybe the same thing. How do you feel about, I don't know, chocolate cheesecake? It's not maybe how I feel about chocolate cheesecake, but you might think I'm insane. What do you mean you don't like chocolate cheesecake? Are you okay? Are you all right? I'm like, no, it's not my thing. What is there right or wrong in that? No, it's difference, it's preference, it's choice, and we've all got it. So let's be respectful of each other out here in that space. So if your family system was like, in a way, always intrusive of everything and superimposing, then did you feel suffocated in so many ways? Did you know that? Could you feel that you could use your voice? Was you constantly being told? Was you listened to by your parents? Yeah? Was you ever really sat down and listened to about what was going on in your head and in your life and your feelings? It's something I always sit with Tristan and I go, are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you happy? What's going on? And the more I do that, the more he just comes and says to me, I just want to talk to you for a minute, Mum. And I go, yeah, sure, let's sit and talk. And, same way, I'll go and talk to him and I'll say, Mummy needs to cry and I'm going to have a cry. Can you give Mummy a cuddle? Because Mummy has to cry and I want to have a cuddle and I just want you to be there for me. Because we're growing together through this life journey, right? I'm growing, he's growing. As beings, we're growing every day. I mean, I'm not done being the person I need to be, and he's far from being done from the person he needs to be. He's 8. But this is a journey, right? And there's no real end to it until there's an end to it, right? So I think we have to be willing to have this relationship with our children where it's very open, where we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable with each other and respectful of each other, respectful of each other's opinions, listen to each other, actively listen as well, really listen, not just be like, oh, not really listening, you're boring me now. Pay attention, listen. It's really important that we listen to our children. I find that more important now than ever, and especially with boys. Definitely, it's around the emotional stuff, big, huge. Tristan said to me yesterday, I don't want to be a wimp if I cry, Mummy. Am I a wimp if I cry? And I said, no way. Who told you that? It's all good. You cry as much as you need to cry. It's fine, right? So, hold a space for your children. Be respectful within that family dynamic. and don't dominate and don't be controlling as a parent. I feel that we always want to control everything within our children's lives because we think we know what's best, but actually, they've chose to come here and have this life experience, in my opinion. That's kind of my beliefs. And so let them be here and explore, and let them live the life that they want to live. So also, if you problem solve with calm conversation rather than aggressive verbal words or physical violence, I've definitely have hit Tristan in the past. Nothing severe, but a smack here and a smack there. And I definitely have more awareness of myself now as this being, as to really, is that helpful? Does that solve anything? I mean, it should be the very, very, very last result. Something that I learned on my parenting course as well, which was fantastic. So mindful parenting, sitting down and getting the root. Kids normally act up and act out, or they go quiet in themselves and reserve when there's something going on inside emotionally. So always be willing to have that awareness. Now, because I was an ice queen, I would be quite rigid in a lot of the ways that I would demonstrate how to articulate myself in terms of what was okay and what's not okay, right? So I would become unavailable instantly, stubborn, closed off, inflexible, unspontaneous, uncompromising, and unchangeable, adamant, and very tough. Tough with Tristan, tough with everyone, tough with my mum. Still there's work to be done. I'll be real. We're working on that. I'm working on that on a subconscious, and just putting as enough gratitude out there as I can. There's also only one way. That is your way. Don't I know it? And so if others don't go along with your way, you go solo. And that can be a lonely road, right? Because it means that most of the time you're not really surrounded. You'll isolate yourself. And I think I isolated myself a lot from people, because it's well, if you don't listen to me, then if you're not agreeing with me, then I'm sorry, then bye. Say bye. And so where can we be more appropriately disengaged? It's kind of what we're thinking about here. If you're kind of that kind of person, yeah, how can we fix that? You could be easily offended, you could be distrustful, you're more likely to cut people out of your life than tell them that they upset you. Yep, hands up. Totally. I'm willing to. I've been that person, and I can still be that. I know I can still be that person, rather than have a conversation. I know that's something that's been in me for years. So when we're talking about changing who you are and opening up to be something different, takes a lot of practice. And so this is why I come to you as a real being, and not even as a coach. I'm still a real human being. I'm still working through my own stuff personally, and I'm bringing you what I call the no BS. I can't be telling you one thing and doing another. So this is where I'm allowing myself to be more vulnerable with you and share more with you, because I want you to see that it is a journey. It doesn't necessarily happen overnight. It's the decisions that you make every single day to want to better yourself, not just for you, but for the people around you, for the people that matter, for all your relationships. So, ways that we can get around that. If you become totally rigid and you want to cut off, create a pattern to excuse yourself. Have some time out, regroup, walk away from it, catch your breath, count down to 10, I don't know, take a glass of water, walk around the block. I know this could have helped me in a lot of situations where I just snapped and cut off and was bye, because you don't know how to appropriately engage in a conversation, because a lot of the time maybe you don't want to upset people, so it's easy to cut them off. Isn't that insane? because the other person is not understanding like what is actually going on here. It's also kind of the person might be reminding you of someone else, like a past relationship or a past experience or a familiar dynamic. So it's not always necessarily about that person, right? So what you can do in order to change from being rigid, to go a bit more firm, but still be wanting to be open enough to receive and listen and not completely shut yourself down, is that you can be really clear about what is okay and not okay within your internal, like within eternal relationships, within any kind of relationships. You maintain your integrity and your authenticity without anger. And even if others don't agree, it's okay. You have to follow through on what you believe in and what you believe is okay, and what is okay and not okay for you. You know what's important to you, and you know what you really want from life, and you know who you are, and you know what's aligning with you and not aligning with you, right? So stay solid in your truth and live your truth and use your voice. That is important. But be approachable, confident and approachable. You can be kind and compassionate as well. You don't have to be completely, no aggression has to come into that space whatsoever, believe me. And I know, because I've been aggressive in that situation, because I've got angry and mad about what's okay. And I'm like, because I have expectations, and like, you should know what's okay or not okay, but not being vocal about it, if you know what I mean. So this is where we can actually set boundaries with kindness and ease. This is the affirmation of going from that person to that person. Okay. Chameleons. I've definitely been a chameleon too. And what do we mean by those sort of people? Kind of wearing a lot of different masks. Kind of really out of balance in many ways. You could be codependent. You really don't even know how to form your own opinion. You're kind of like going with what everyone else says. You're not really sure about who you really are. Yeah, I mean, like out of alignment completely, of like, you don't know how to live your truth and speak your truth. Yeah. And that could be a weak identity that you just don't know. That's something that I definitely have been as well. I think I've taken all these different roles on. The mask wearer, definitely. You could be overly influenced. I was definitely over-influenced in my partnerships a lot of the time. Toxic, especially the toxic relationships. Even in my past relationship, I'd always be like, whatever he said would be gold. And I would be like, if he said it, then I must listen. And this is where we must even just be able to willing to take things on and run with it, or be like, nah, that's not for me. Some stuff I put out, you might think, yeah, this is great, and sometimes you're like, no, don't really agree with that. You've got to really know who you are, right? Without too much influence from other people. You've got to really know what's okay and what sits well with you. You're a unique human being with your own personality, with your own ideology, with your own philosophies, with your own creative energy. We can't all be the same. So you're influenced by your partners, friends or family. So you really just don't know, like, who you really are. So you could even take on likes and dislikes of people, partners. Someone says to you, I don't like that girl. And you'll be like, I don't like her either. But don't know her, and you've never seen her, and you've never had a relationship with her. And that's what I mean. You just kind of go along with everybody else. It's a bit like a sheep even. Following the crowd, but really not having an identity of your own. So how can we go to being more authentic in our relationships, and more authentically engaged in our relationships? How can we show up as who we truly really are? First of all, it's a process. It's a journey even to self-discovery and self-realization, right? You're going to have to kind of go, maybe I don't really know who I am. Maybe I have been influenced by too many things, and own that. Sit with that and kind of go, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, maybe this is work I need to do. I need to sit down, I need to spend time with me. I mean, 2017 was the year of just me spending time with me. The good, the bad, the ugly. Me. Dissecting different parts of me. Dealing with the demons. Uncovering some hidden truths about my own self, my own existence. Really pulling up some stuff from the past. Confronting a lot of issues within my own reality, taking ownership and responsibility of what I've created. You know, it takes courage and bravery to be like, man, I haven't always been the best version of myself, right? And so we can move forward though when we take ownership. So when you go from being unenmeshed and wearing all these different masks and changing who you are depending on who you're with, to a person who's not afraid to be who they are, not afraid to be seen. You can actually engage with the conversation where you don't have to always react to what people say, and you don't always have to agree, and you can just be like, well, everybody has an opinion, right? My favourite one. And you can just, you know, agree not to disagree. And accept that we are all experiencing this life very differently, and that not everything needs an opinion or is warranted by an opinion. I mean, it's just kind of like sometimes you're just best saying nothing, not getting too involved. Just be like, oh. I try not to engage in conversations where it's too much about other people as well. It's not inspiring for me. It's not lifting for me. It's not motivating for me. So you really got to understand what the kind of conversations you're having in the first place, right? I think you need to get really close to your own feelings and understand that you are here creating your own reality. Yeah, powerful. So creating a balance between who you are independently and going through relationships with much more grace and ease. Having the dialogue you need to have with grace and ease, and forming your own opinion or having your own opinion. You know, some people feel like their opinion is the truth, the ultimate truth, and that they must follow them. But everything they say is like, my favourite one is when people go, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, that's not me. That's not who I am. But I want people to understand that really and truly, your truth is the only truth that matters. It does. And your story matters. So live that. Live your truth, live your story, create your own story. Powerful from that space. So you could be very intrusive as a being, and this is kind of where I've been as well in a lot of my relationships, and where I've been influenced by my own relationships where my mum was quite intrusive on so many levels, and to the point where I disengaged completely with her. So I went ice queen, cut off, and would often cut off, and she would cut off, and it got petty. And it does get petty from that space. Like, people would rather cut you off again, like, than have a conversation that's really going to move forward and be accepting, or even apologizing and just being like ownership again, authentic, honest, real, genuine. So if you're the powerhouse, intrusive, kind of forceful being, that you become quite pushy and invasive and insensitive in so many ways, forceful. You like to, and you're interrupting. You're very, very just not willing to sit there and listen to what other people have to say. And so your opinion matters, right? And you know what's best. And that could be in a parent who's like that, right? We've all grown up maybe with one parent who's a bit more intrusive and a bit more pushy and a bit like, you got to listen to me. My ex was like that. I told you so. You should have listened to me. I told you so. Very pushy, very fiery, very ego, very male, Leo. But no, is that helpful when you're pushy? Do you think it actually gets stuff done? Or is it better to be more assertive, less intrusive, and have a style where you make more gentle waves? And that's how we bring balance into those relationships. Make noise. By all means, I think we can make noise in a peaceful way. We don't have to be aggressive and assertive, intrusive. We can be more assertive, and we can have a different approach. We can lead with peace. I think that's possible. We can have more listening skills. A good coach is a listener more than anything, because it's always, like I said, it's always about the conversations you're having with self that I'm facilitating and hearing, and kind of like seeing where you are with yourself, what's really going on within you, not about you or me or you or anyone else, because we're just all mirrors out here. Taking charge and of who you are, but in a soft way, and expressing your point of view, so that it is an environment of collaboration with everyone making important decisions, not just you giving orders in so many ways, depending on the dynamic. You should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And it's like what I was talking about the other day, in the words that we shouldn't really be using, and about the language. Whenever we feel that we're shoulding people, it's making us feel more superior in a way. And that's always kind of very much ego, and getting out of that space is going to lead us into a place of love, because the ego is all about fear and control and worry and anxiety and doubt and manipulation and so many other things, because it's always trying to stay in the flesh, where the spirit is love, and the spirit is accepting, and the spirit has compassion and kindness. And so we have to always be desiring to be more in spirit and more in love and more less judging and more accepting and more kind of like, and in that self, it's just a journey of going from fear to love, and I think if I'm consciously every day, which I do, and I desire that to be, making a decision to walk in gratitude and walk in love, then that's what will happen. So balancing your desires to lead, to collaborate with ease and grace, so that no matter if you're leading, that you're always engaging in a conversation that is about collaboration, asking someone, the other person that you're conversating with, like how that really makes them feel. Some people don't want your feedback. Some people aren't welcomed by that. Not everything needs your opinion. Not everyone's coming to you and sharing their stories because they want an opinion. The first thing when someone comes to you and shares a story with you, if the only thing is to give advice, just say, no, how does that make you feel? How are you getting on? Or do you need me for anything? We can have a little chat about this if you feel I can support you. It's a totally different dynamic when you turn into more of an active listener. Peacekeepers. Oh, yeah. We're never really happy, the peacekeepers. And I've been a peacekeeper before. I'm going to have to shove my way through these. We've only got 11 minutes. But the peacekeepers are always the hypersensitive, the empaths, slightly fearful, maybe over vigilant, maybe over functioning, hyper receptive. Yeah, all these things. And it's like a disease to please. It's never really about you and the relationship with you. It's always about how you can please and help other people, and fixing people in so many ways, right? So excuse me, it's like conflict scares you so much that you're always trying to keep the peace, which actually is just destroying you in the process. So how do you then get into a state where you're more in the flow of your own life, and again appropriately disengage from things that actually you don't need to be involved with? Where can you say, this really isn't my problem? I've had to really step out of that space a lot of the time, and I feel I'm definitely more of an empath in so many ways. But I've gone from being more aware of self and the environment that I'm in, and kind of being more accepting and receptive in so many ways. Definitely being the more open, accepting that not everything needs fixing, and I'm not here to fix everybody. Definitely huge, big for me as a healer and a coach, that even I'm not even here to fix my clients' problems. I'm here to facilitate and to hold space and to get them to look at themselves and see where they can fix the things within themselves, right? It's never about me. I don't even want that responsibility, you know? And from that space, I've been able to facilitate better, right? Giving my clients the opportunity to look and see very clearly what's been happening and which stories keep repeating in their own lives. I think staying in the flow is what's really been the focus of 2018, even though we're very very newly into 2018. I already feel that, because it's a conscious decision for me to be expansive this year, and expansion was a word that I put down. Flow and ease, three words that I really wanted to focus on. And flow and ease was that each and every day I'm just in the flow. I'm getting through each day. I'm feeling, I'm journaling, I'm writing, I'm making those calls, I'm trusting, I'm leaning. But there's no fear, there's no worry, there's no anxiety, there's no need to do and be everywhere or help everyone. And from that space, I've been able to attract already within 8 days so much, just from that mindset. So powerful when we surrender. And I want a lot of you who are healers and coaches and out there to get that, of it's much better to sit there and visualize and how you feel, how you want your feel and how you want your world to be, and to go out there and try and fight for it, because you don't need to. You just need to get into alignment and things will start to flow your way. It's powerful. It's been a big game changer for me, definitely. And it's obviously you flow with what is happening within yourself, and that it's not your responsibility to eliminate conflict from the world that you live in, or the world that is around you, or any of the relationships that surround you. It's just not your job. Does that feel better? Breathe. So you can easily discern your responsibilities from those of others and allow things to just happen with flow and ease. Amazing, powerful, great. So just one more, and I've only got 7 minutes, so really kind of like making sure we get through the loner. Distance, where people just are really cold, unreachable, distant, unreliable, non-communicative, aloof, and really don't open up and share themselves with anyone. Don't just open up at all. Really protective, self-protective, elusive, because it's scary to open up, right? So the balance is being appropriately disengaged, right? So you can appropriately disengage, but you can still have maybe communication that you're appropriately disengaged. Disconnecting from someone else and focusing on you, it's not a bad thing, but it's got to be balanced. You can't be completely shut off from the world and shut off from society, because you don't want to have those conversations that might make you feel a bit uncomfortable, which I think happens in these situations when people aren't very good at non-communicating. It took me a long time to get Tristan to open up about his feelings and communicate with me. It took me a long time to actually really get out of that space where I wasn't acting and shutting off everybody else as well. You don't have to necessarily disengage completely, but you can, do things differently. For instance, appropriately initiating an end of a conversation, or an end of a date, or an end of a meeting, or calling up and saying, I don't really feel like it and I'm sorry. Just using your voice a little bit more, I think. just being a little bit more open and not being, maybe it's a fight, it's also kind of thing of like not wanting to offend. So expressing your desire for closeness and separation with words that flow for these, just calling up and saying, hey, I said I'd be there and I'd do this and I'm really sorry. That's just not going to work for me now, but maybe some other time. Is that difficult? Or I'm sorry, I said I'd do that and I didn't honour my word. I closed off completely and I didn't communicate with you about that, and I'm really sorry. So in future I'd communicate more. Different levels of examples where we can really appropriately disengage. Yeah, and that's where we always want to be going. We want to be having conversations, and we want to be willing to have these conversations, because people aren't out. We're not mind readers out here, and we're always going to get into a space where we're going to be making assumptions about a lot of things. This is why I think this work is so important, and it's something that I'm really going to be spending time with myself, over the next couple of months, of establishing things within my own relationships and working out who really I am in the world of boundaries. What really works for me. I've been really clear already from this year about what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and writing that down and making sure that when I'm engaging in conversations that people really understand who I am as a being. And that's in business relationships, that's in personal relationships, that's kind of everything that I do and work with. And I think this will make better relationships all round, right? So just got 3 minutes, so I'm just going to finish up in terms of like people that maybe be bullying you in a way. Because there aren't many boundaries in place. So you might feel manipulated and not know how to respond. And it might be, but these people remind you of someone else. And remember, we are attracting a lot of the time based on how we feel about ourselves. So if a behaviour is a familiar dynamic, you've got to ask yourself, why is this familiar to me? And is it because you just don't know how to be vocal about who you are and what's okay and what's not okay? You need to make simple requests, without trying to convince them that you're right and they're wrong, but losing language that is firm and calm in your truth. Remember, you can't control people, and you definitely can't control bullies, but also you can make a plan that's going to empower you to use your voice so that you can live your truth, so that you can be seen and you can be heard, and that your voice will matter to you. I want you to know that your voice matters. And if anyone tries to shut you down and let you know that your voice doesn't matter, then you know exactly how to engage or disengage appropriately. That will keep authenticity alive within your own world, but keep integrity alive in your relationships. People don't really get that. So I think we're going to be moving on to some great subjects coming up over the year, or especially around authenticity, integrity, because people don't really get it on the level I think they should get it. And it's so powerful, and it can really change and shape your world, and it can really make you into a better human being, right? It can make you into the best version of self, that you can live this life with power and ease and grace. Thanks for being here today. It's been a great time and talking about all these amazing things. It's definitely changed my world, and I'm looking forward to sharing more with you about boundaries maybe later on in the podcast series. Let me know how you get on and how you find the podcast. I'm always interested to hear you. And until next time, was actually tomorrow is my regular show. Every Tuesday you'll be able to catch me now on the podcast. So looking forward to spending more time with you this year. You take care, sending you all the love and light. Speak soon.